The rain hadn't stopped since morning, drumming steadily against the tall windows of Marcus Reed's office on the 32nd floor of a downtown Chicago high-rise. He sat behind his desk, tie loosened, staring at the printed contract in front of him like it might rearrange itself into a better solution if he stared long enough. It wouldn't. His grandmother's will was clear. The family estate and controlling shares of Reed Industries would pass to him only if he was married or engaged within the next 60 days. Otherwise, everything went to his cousin Preston, a man who had already run 2 companies into the ground. Marcus was 34, sharp-jawed, dark-haired, the kind of man who commanded a room without raising his voice. But the one thing he couldn't command was a relationship. 3 years of dedicating himself entirely to rebuilding his father's company had left him respected, wealthy, and entirely alone. His assistant Nora knocked twice before letting herself in. "You look like a man who just found out his grandmother's lawyer has a sense of humor. She wants me married in 60 days, Marcus said flatly. Or Preston gets everything. Nora winced. That's a lot. I need a solution. A real one, not some rushed disaster of a relationship that falls apart under scrutiny. He rubbed his temples. I need someone who can convincingly play the part. Someone who understands boundaries and won't try to make it more than it is. Nora was quiet for a moment, then said, There's someone. My sister's friend, Claire Bennett. She does freelance event planning, needs steady income, and she's... Nora paused, choosing her words. She's sharp. She'd play the part well. And she's not the type to get starry-eyed over money or status. That was how 3 days later Claire Bennett found herself sitting across from Marcus Reed in a quiet cafe near the river, a folder of paperwork between them. Claire was 29, slender, with warm brown eyes and dark hair that fell in soft waves past her shoulders, dressed simply in a fitted sweater with a deep V-neck that suited the unseasonably warm October afternoon. She had grown up watching her mother struggle financially after her father's business partner had swindled them out of everything, and the number Marcus offered for a 6-month engagement was enough to finally put her mother's medical bills behind her for good. Let me get this straight, Claire said, studying the contract. You want me to pretend to be your fiancée in public, at family events, for 6 months, and you'll pay me $200,000. That's correct, Marcus said. No physical relationship expected. Separate residences, though you'll need to be present for family gatherings and a few public appearances. We end things amicably after the estate transfers. No messy public breakup. Clean, professional, mutually beneficial. Claire studied him for a long moment. Why me? Nora says you're capable of maintaining boundaries. I need someone who won't lose herself in this. Someone who understands it's business. I can do business, Claire said and signed the contract. Their first public appearance was at the Reed Industries Winter Gala. A lavish affair filled with Chicago's elite. Claire arrived in a deep emerald gown. And when Marcus took her arm at the entrance, something in his chest tightened unexpectedly at how naturally she fit beside him, laughing at his introductions, asking sharp questions about his business partners that made him realize she'd actually researched the company beforehand. You didn't have to prepare, he murmured as they moved through the crowd. If I'm playing a part, I play it well, Claire said simply. Besides, your grandmother is watching us from that corner booth like a hawk. I assume she's the one who actually needs convincing. Marcus followed her gaze to where Eleanor Reed, 82 and sharp as ever, watched them with an unreadable expression. She's the only one whose opinion actually matters here. Eleanor approached them near the end of the evening, her cane tapping against the marble floor. So this is the young woman who's captured my grandson's attention, she said, studying Claire with the kind of scrutiny that made most people nervous. Claire Bennett, Claire said, extending her hand with easy confidence. It's wonderful to finally meet you, Mrs. Reed. Marcus speaks of you often. Does he? Eleanor's eyes flicked to Marcus, something knowing in her expression. And what do you see in my grandson, dear? Beyond the obvious. Claire didn't hesitate. He works too hard and forgets to eat lunch most days. He's stubborn about asking for help. But he remembers the name of every employee's spouse and kid. And he personally covered a warehouse, workers' medical bills, last year without telling anyone. I see someone who cares more than he lets on. Marcus stared at her, startled. He hadn't told her about the warehouse worker. She'd clearly done more digging than he realized. Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Well, at least she's paying. Attention! She patted Claire's hand and moved on, leaving Marcus looking at Claire with new curiosity. How did you know about that? He asked quietly. I talked to some of your employees before tonight, Claire admitted. I wanted to actually understand who I was pretending to be engaged to. Made it easier to be convincing. Over the following weeks, their arrangement settled into an unexpected rhythm. Claire attended board dinners and family brunches, charming Marcus's relatives with an ease that surprised even him. She helped him prepare for a difficult negotiation with a supplier, offering insights from her event planning background that gave him an edge he hadn't considered. In turn, Marcus found himself remembering small details about her life, that she volunteered at an animal shelter on weekends, that her mother's health had improved since Claire had been able to cover her treatment, that she'd once dreamed of opening her own event planning firm before financial pressures forced her into freelance work, supporting other people's businesses instead of her own. One evening in late November, after a particularly grueling board meeting, Marcus found Claire waiting in his office with takeout, containers spread across his desk. "You looked like you needed actual food today, not just coffee," she said, unpacking containers of pad thai and spring rolls. "Nora mentioned you skipped lunch again." Marcus sat across from her, unexpectedly touched. "You didn't have to do this." "I know, I wanted to." Claire handed him a container. "Besides, if I'm going to keep pretending to care about your well-being in public, I figured I should actually start doing it in private too." Something shifted in Marcus's chest at her words, casual, but weighted with something neither of them was ready to name yet. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Why did you really take this deal?" "Nora said it was for your mother's medical bills. But there's more to it, isn't there?" Claire was quiet for a moment, twirling noodles around her fork. "My father built a small logistics company. His business partner embezzled everything, left my dad with the debt, and destroyed his health in the process. I watched my mother work 3 jobs to keep us afloat, while my father's reputation crumbled around him. I swore I'd never depend on someone else's promises again. This contract, it's the first time in years I felt like I had control over my own financial future. That's why you asked for the money up front in the negotiation," Marcus realized. "Not because you didn't trust me, because you'd learned not to trust promises." "Exactly," Claire said, surprised he'd understood so quickly. By December, the lines between performance and reality had blurred so thoroughly that neither of them could pinpoint exactly when it happened. Marcus caught himself reaching for Claire's hand during family dinners, without thinking about it, and Claire found herself genuinely laughing at his dry humor, instead of performing amusement for an audience. Eleanor watched them both with quiet satisfaction, saying nothing, though her sharp eyes missed nothing either. It was at the Reed family Christmas gathering, surrounded by extended relatives and business associates, that Preston, Marcus's cousin, bitter about the inheritance he stood to lose, cornered Claire near the bar. "How much is he paying you?" Preston asked, bluntly swirling his drink. "Because we both know this isn't real. Marcus Reed doesn't fall in love. He calculates." Claire's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice level. "You don't know him at all, do you?" "I know he needs a fiancée to keep the company, and suddenly there's a fiancée. Simple math." "The math you're missing," Claire said quietly, "is that some things can start as one thing and become something else entirely. Maybe you've never experienced that, which is why it's hard for you to imagine." She walked away before Preston could respond, finding Marcus on the back terrace, staring out at the snow-dusted garden. "Preston cornered me," she said, coming to stand beside him. I'm sorry. He's been insufferable since the will was read." Marcus glanced at her. "What did he say?" "That this isn't real. That you don't fall in love, only calculate." Claire hesitated. "Is he wrong?" Marcus turned to face her fully, something vulnerable, crossing his features for the first time since she'd known him. "He's wrong. I didn't expect to feel anything real in this arrangement. I built walls around myself after watching my father's first marriage fall apart over money and status, but somewhere between the galas and the takeout dinners and you actually caring about the answer when you ask how my day was, I stopped calculating anything where you're concerned." Claire's breath caught. "Marcus, I know this started as a contract," he continued. "I know I'm the last person who should be saying this, but I don't want 6 months, Claire. I don't want an amicable ending in separate lives after the estate transfers. I want this to be real if you'll let it." Claire looked at him for a long moment, snow beginning to fall softly around them, before she finally spoke. "I stopped performing weeks ago, Marcus. I just didn't know how to tell you without sounding like I was trying to manipulate the deal in my favor." "You could never manipulate me into anything I didn't already want," Marcus said, reaching for her hand. "Then I suppose," Claire said, a smile breaking across her face, "we should tell your grandmother the truth." They found Eleanor by the fireplace, watching them approach with the same knowing look she'd worn since the winter gala. "Well," she said before either of them could speak, "it's about time you two stopped pretending for my benefit and started being honest with yourselves." "You knew?" Marcus asked. "I've known since the gala, when she told me about the warehouse worker," Eleanor said, smiling at Claire. "A woman doesn't research. A man that thoroughly, unless she's already halfway to caring about him, contract or not." 6 months later, in a small ceremony overlooking Lake Michigan, Claire Bennett married Marcus Reed, not because a will demanded it, but because somewhere between a fake contract and real takeout dinners, Two people who'd both built walls against being hurt had found something worth tearing them down for. Eleanor sat in the front row, Kane resting against her chair, watching her grandson finally choose something real over something calculated. And for the first time in years, she looked entirely at peace.